think we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to the 2021 Tech Extra remote event. And I put a picture up here to get us started to remind us that we used to get together in person, and look forward very much to doing that with you. Again, I see a lot of the faces in the picture on the video room this morning, and I wish we were all together, but I'm delighted that we're here together virtually. I'm going to kick us off this morning with just a couple of quick comments, and then we're going to do an overview of some of the progress that Internet 2's made over the next couple of years. But really, the next 3 days are about the community at large, and we've got a great blend of content from folks across the community updating us on what they've been working on in addition to the progress for NGI. So we were expecting about 400 people over the next 3 days, which is just amazing attendance for a virtual event. And we really want to make it an interactive event. Please use the chat room, use the Slack channels, use the Canvas tools. I'll tell you, as a presenter, I actually can't see any of those things. So also feel free to unmute and ask a question if you want during the conversation. We're going to do a couple of housekeeping items, and then we're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and then we'll get right into the program. So the chat window in Zoom is a place you can ask questions, as well as in Slack. And again, you can unmute and ask questions verbally. In general, we're going to ask that you can queue up your questions during people's presentation, and hopefully each presenter will have a few minutes at the end to answer questions. So we'll do that at the end of each session. Each morning, we're going to have a Meet Me room, which some of you attended this morning. There are actually a bunch of different Meet Me rooms, and you can kind of select who you want to go chat with, or join the room where everyone is and grab a couple of people and go off to another room. That's available 11 to 12 a.m. Eastern time. And it's a great place to meet and have coffee and just have a chance to catch up with people that maybe you haven't seen in a while. We're going to have a Birds of a Feather session at the end of each day. And that's a chance to catch up and have some shorter talks. They're kind of curated by the staff on key topics. But it's a chance to have an informal discussion and some social time at the end of each day's session. One final thing, as with all of these events, it takes effort to put them together. I want to thank the meetings team who took a lot of load off. Our staff was less involved this year because we've been working on network transition and decommissioning and other things you're going to hear about. And the meetings team really stepped up, and our marketing team really stepped up and really helped us put this together. We also want to thank the 3 sponsors, West Direct, Ciena, and Cisco, for helping to defer some of the costs of the event. And one of the things we're going to do this morning is hear from Mike Shepard at Cisco, just briefly in recognition of their sponsorship. I would just say this has been a heck of a year for Cisco and Internet 2, and Mike has been just absolutely spectacular in terms of bridging all the technical staff in the community together with the technical staff at Cisco as we introduce this new network. So I'm very happy to have a chance to offer Mike a few minutes to talk about Cisco. So I'm going to stop sharing so you can see Mike.
Rob, can you hear me okay? Guys, can you hear me okay from here?
We can. Thanks,
Oh,
Mike.
perfect. Hey, listen, I'm going to be brief. First off, great to see faces. It's been a long time. And listen, we're really, really proud of this sponsorship. We want to thank you for the opportunity on behalf of all of Cisco. But Rob, I think I'd be doing a disjustice if I didn't, thank you and your staff. It's been a hell of a year. It probably feels like 7 years in dog years. It was a big task. I got to tell you, and I think this comes from all of Cisco, the collaboration, the teamwork, just the hours that you and your team put forth to make this migration successful. Kudos to everybody involved. And I also, just a special shout out to GDT, our partner that played a big role in the deployment. Again, hats off to everybody. It was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of fun work. As I just think also about, I'm excited about the future. I think this is phase 1 of many. Looking forward to other opportunities to collaborate with Internet 2 and the community around network advances, optimizing the network, automating the network, and really, just as we've said all along, is trying to accelerate research across the community. I also want to recognize Mike Simpson and his team and the Global NOC and Chris Robb's team and using automation, Cisco NSO. And I think that just proved to be a critical asset in the effort. I'm excited about what the future holds there too for the community as a whole. And then as I just kind of look out over the future, some of the early conversations we're having about neutral host and CBRS, private LTE, I'm really excited about those opportunities. I'm going to just close with, we worked hard to get here. We're going to work even harder on the future, because I think this is just such an important community for everything that goes on globally, locally, et cetera. So hats off to you and the team, and appreciate the opportunity. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Mike. And you're going to hear a lot more about what we've been up to with Cisco this year throughout the next 3 days. To give you a little preview, I have 3 tasks in the next 20 minutes or so. I want to kind of just sum up and highlight some of the accomplishments in terms of bringing the new next generation infrastructure online. I want to send a very hearty thank you to the team, Global NOC, Internet 2 staff, our corporate partners, and the community for the amazing amount of effort during a pandemic to help us get this transition to where it is. And then the last part of my talk is just a little bit of a look forward on some of the things we're going to be focusing on in 2022 at Internet 2. That hopefully will set the stage for a bunch of great talks over the next couple of days that go into a lot more depth. I am not going to try and answer the how of how things work. That's for other people. I'm just going to try and give you the what in terms of what we've accomplished and kind of where we're going. And so with that, I'll put my screen back up, and I will not see anyone again while I'm presenting. Okay. So, just again, high level for new folks on the call, we are, a community that delivers a backbone for research infrastructure in the United States and globally. With our regional, state and regional network partners, we provide service to a wide swath of public sector entities, including campuses, K-12 schools, government agencies, and international peers. And we do this through collaboration, and hopefully that comes forward in all the things that you'll be hearing about over the next 3 days. And then finally, I think a shift is we're not just infrastructure people anymore. We are increasingly software and tools people. Those are the key tools coming out of this infrastructure upgrade that we hope really will enable large-scale collaborations going forward. You may remember we started this process for the next generation infrastructure actually in 2016 with a series of workshops collecting papers and talking about what we wanted to do. And in 2018, we distilled that down into a couple statements that are on the slide. We can read them later about what we're trying to achieve, but really focusing on supporting the data-intensive research use case, enhancing access to the cloud for administrative and research use cases, thinking about infrastructure sharing and software-driven infrastructure as keys to enabling that, and then resetting the scale economies through sustainable economics. So we're at a great point today where we can talk about how we brought together all these activities over the last 6 years to essentially be at a place where we can announce substantial completion of the transition to the new infrastructure. You're going to see as I talk through this that some of the things we can say transition are mostly complete and get big green check boxes. There are other areas where there's still work in progress. And in fact, in things like telemetry and performance and improving the service model, one of our goals was not to do this as a waterfall project, but in fact, to get to a place where we could transition to a much more agile, incremental approach for improvements over the coming years. So, but let's talk about some of the concrete improvements that have been made over the last couple of years. First, the optical network upgrade essentially completed earlier in this year, 2021, in February. But the wave transitions actually have completed in the last couple of weeks. And so nationwide, we've moved on to a new fiber pair on the red thick line. This is SMF28 Ultra Fiber. That's a little bit better performance characteristics Chris will talk about. We can now do 800 gigabit waves between many of our locations and can carry about 32 terabits on any path. We added a path between Cincinnati and Cleveland. The path between Chicago and the East Coast was kind of a weak spot in our resiliency strategy. And so adding this little piece from Cincinnati to Cleveland, it gives us some alternative routes with the same reachability with our transponders out of Chicago towards the East Coast. And we updated some paths. So we took a new path from Kansas City to Denver. It goes a little bit north, and from Denver to Salt Lake goes a little bit north through Lincoln and Cheyenne. We got a fiber pair that goes through Providence instead of a kind of through the boondocks of Connecticut. And we added a node in Huntsville, Alabama. We also reduced the space and power of this network by about 70%, which puts us in a great place while we're adding capacity to kind of reset the scale economy. On the packet side, we moved from large scale kind of half rack Juniper nodes to 77 new disaggregated 1U routers. It's a real architecture change that Chris is going to talk about in a little bit more depth. We now are at a place where we have 24 by 400 gig and 12 by 100 gig at least in every node. Many of the nodes have double or quadruple that amount of capacity. In fact, 4 of the sites have 4 times that, 18 of the sites have 2 times that, and 25 of them have that capacity. And we're just starting to skim the surface of the capacity that's already deployed on those devices. Puts us in a great place to scale over the next couple of years. New nodes in Fargo and Pensacola, and we removed nodes in Baton Rouge and Boston. And again, about a 70% savings in space and power. The lines you see on this map, these are all 400 gig links. And when I get a little later in the presentation, you'll see some of the capacity upgrades in real numbers. Another thing we did is we extended the optical network natively into the peering points. And this is a recognition of how important clouds become since we built the last network 10 years ago. A number of our peering points were actually not on the optical footprint. They were stubs off of routers with a single fiber pair or a couple of fiber pairs. Extending the optical platform to these sites means that we can bring the backbone bandwidth to the place where we're delivering a lot of capacity these days. This is a really important improvement for Cloud Connect, for I2PX, for RPI and Ripcord. We have installed a new next generation performance assurance service. This is a new 2 by 100 gig node at each one of the packet sites. We had a 10 gig test point at many of the packet nodes on the old network. Now we've deliberately gone ahead and put a 2 by 100 gig node in each one of these sites. These nodes also have some 10 gig connections, and in places where we have 4 routers, we've got a connection on each of the 4 routers. And the other thing that will happen with this over time is with all those new nodes and those 100 gig interfaces, we're kind of going to have both the ability to do our internal test message for our internal performance assurance purposes. We'll also have externally facing interfaces that can be used for ad hoc testing at all of these sites. So that should be a real benefit to the community to be able to test at 100 gig into the network. And we also have direct connections to almost every device in the network, which is a huge, huge improvement in terms of our ability to troubleshoot over time. We've installed a new secure management network. This is a project that the security team has been hoping for about 5 years, and we were able to finally deliver it as part of the project. It's essentially an out-of-band rack LAN device in every one of the sites, has an open gear terminal server, a Juniper switch in each one of the sites, and then in many of the sites has a 10 gig optical side channel, optical channel between these secure management network nodes. In some places, we also use the optical side channel or a VRF, or a VLAN between sites. I'm reading ahead. And then we have multiple VRFs across this network for the different functions within the network in terms of accessing it. New to network services Internet 2, secure management network includes firewalls. And this is at the entry and exit points from the secure management network, and obviously provides us a greater level of telemetry, logging, and security management for the secure management network. So that's a nice improvement on the security of the network. And then probably one of the most transformational things is the introduction of NSO, Network Service Orchestrator, as our software layer, kind of sitting below the service layer that we're going to be offering over time. So you have the physical infrastructure in the purplish box on the optical platform, and on the packet platform, we now have a software layer that has northbound APIs, and Mike's going to be talking about, and others are going to be talking about some of the APIs that we're going to be building on the north end of that. Just as a sense of how fully we've embraced NSO as part of this, the goal here is consistent policy and faster change management. The team went all in on our implementation of NSO for the packet layer, built out all of our service models in NSO, 19 of them edge facing, 30 in total backbones, the device config, et cetera. And all 3,500 service instances are modeled out in NSO. Delivered 242,000 lines of code from NSO out to the routers. Just a sense of scale during the transition, 482 merge requests where we had peer review of NSO models, 5,000 builds and 15,000 commits in the last couple of months through the NSO platform. So just an amazing amount of transition from CLI to using NSO as the intermediate layer between the platform. You're doing great. I'm going to transition a little bit towards some of the numbers and the future. I don't want to stop without saying thank you to the team. And here's a picture of about 35 of the folks that have worked on NGI the last year. There's another 35 that are not here on the staff and at Global Knock, and another 35 or 40 out in the community who were deeply involved at various points in the project. So thank you. This has been an enormous and sustained effort, particularly since about February of this year, when all the different parts started to come together and the hardware was deployed, and it got to the place where we had to test it and prove it and then do the transitions. Just absolutely amazing team effort and teamwork. We've had 4 or 5 different teams running parallel activities through the migration period the last few months, and it's been pretty amazing to watch them all work. This project has not been without obstacles. You're going to hear about some of those during this. We've had platform bugs on both the optical and the packet platform. One of the things our community does is we adopt new technology early on in the cycle. You always assume there are going to be some challenges that come along with that, and you build something into your calendar for that. And that's true here too. We certainly have hit some platform bugs, some big, some small, that have had an impact and taken an enormous effort to diagnose and move past. Logistics challenges during the pandemic, just finding stuff, getting stuff shipped, not being able to meet in person, all have had a huge impact. But I think the real story, even though we're a little behind where we wanted to be in the calendar, is the teamwork. And across all the different partnerships that are involved here, it's just been amazing, and it deserves a huge thank you. All right. So towards the future, I'm going to do a little bit of numbers for you. If you think about the Internet 2 network, this thing was designed in 2009, 2010, at a time where we were moving about 80 to 100 petabytes a year. As we round out this year, we've moved 2559 petabytes as of December 1st, and expect to be somewhere around 2.8, 2.9 exabytes for the year. Just enormous growth of almost 30 times in the span of the current network. The boxes are the kind of error margins, little checkered boxes related to the pandemic and the unknown for the rest of this year, but just enormous growth over this period of time, pretty consistent too. More perspective on that. So in 2010, 104 petabytes a year. This year, somewhere around 2,800, 2.8 exabytes. The ratio actually between I2PX and RNE hasn't changed that much, which is interesting to me, especially with all the move to the cloud. I would have thought that ratio to change a little bit, but it's pretty consistent. In terms of total bandwidth, so this is the number of ports that our regional network partners are contracted for. In 2010, it was 203 gigabytes. We still had a lot of 1 gig and 2.5 gig connectors, and folks moving to 10, and in some cases moving to 100. And now we're at 10,000 gigabytes. So huge capacity numbers. One of the other things really interesting is you look at the backbone. In 2010, we hadn't moved to our 100 gig network yet. We were still on 10 gig links. We had 25 routers in that core configuration at the time. And I'm sorry, we had less than 25 routes. We had 25 links at the time. The new network, both because of the 400 gig links and the doubling up of those in the lag groups between cities, and because there are multiple routers in each city and the capacity between them is technically backbone links, just has an enormous amount of bandwidth in it, which obviously is if you look at the 30 times growth in traffic, the growth in backbone capacity is significantly higher. Part of that's because of the topology change. And then the other interesting thing is, the old network, we had 403 gigabits of front-facing ports deployed in 2010. This new network, because of the pizza box and the disaggregated approach, has 810, I think that's gigabits of 810 terabits of capacity on the front-facing ports that's pre-deployed today. We're only using the 127.7 terabits of pre-deployed capacity right now for the backbone. It's an enormous amount of capacity. And again, 70% less space, 70% more less power, which lets us do things like invest in NSO. Cloud Connect's grown a lot. This is just a stat slide. I'm going to fly by it, but we have 100 campuses, 100 regionals representing their members, and then some other affiliate members. That total didn't come out right. So several hundred connections for cloud connections have grown over the last couple of years. This continues to be a place that's of high importance and value, and some of the topology changes were done to support that. You can look at these later. This is the same chart in terms of in the purple, the year-to-year growth, but also a look at month-to-month growth. So this compares, for instance, March of each year for the last 5 years. And some people have been asking later, have we recovered from the pandemic? And you can see clearly in March, which was almost a full month before the shutdown of 20, we saw a dip very clearly in April of 20, in May of 20, in June of 20. But since that time, all the months have really been growing. And we've seen very significant growth in the fall this year. Some of that's related to a measurement bug that we're still working through. So I'm going to switch a little bit to talk about 2022 and some of the things that we're looking forward to. This slide has no pictures on it yet. Next year it'll have pictures, but we're going to continue some improvements to OESS in terms of minor fixes and improvements. Mike's going to talk about some new development activities and some new directions there in terms of a new router proxy and looking glass. Another security feature that we've been really excited to get moving on. It's been on hold for a bit, but routing security and prefix management portal that I think will make a lot of folks' lives a lot easier and provide a lot more transparency in what's in the configs. Enhancing the Cloud Connect portal, and then really buying into our own Kool-Aid and adopting in common as a way to manage role-based access and do delegation of access in our tools. Security team's going to continue the routing security journey and kind of continuing to work on some of the manners principles and other activities related to improving routing security across the community. We've got activities in telemetry, obviously Personar and the ad hoc capabilities facing the community, but also improvements in analytics, looking at the work that's happening in research data, science data tagging, and ways to better identify those flows. Et cetera. We're continuing conversations with colleagues in the Boreas area in the northern tier. When I showed the optical map, that's one part of the country that we can't support 400 gig in yet. Certainly something that's on our list to keep tracking and looking for ways to collaborate to improve. We've got work to do in Manlan and Wix, international improvements. There's some workflow work and click-through agreement discussions about how to accelerate some of our other service deliveries, including rapid private interconnect. And then we've got some feature-related stuff that we're waiting for in the Cisco roadmap for EVPN that will allow us to start introducing new EVPN features at some point later in the year, and potentially segment routing, finer grain segment routing support. I'm going to give you just a one-slide preview of some of the prototyping that's going on for this thing that's called NS Console internally right now. This is just a view of a interface for Looking Glass as an example. And again, built on top of the work that's been done with NSO, adding a new interface that will allow you all to control a lot more features of the network over time. Mike's going to give some more talk about this with his team, I think on Friday, maybe tomorrow after, but I think it's Friday. Naming contest, I put on here the question mark. So this thing is called NS Console. It needs a cooler name eventually. And so if anyone has any great ideas, go to Mike's talk and put them in the chat window. And then finally, you know, that's all the stuff Internet 2 is working on. Obviously, the community is focused on how it's going to start to leverage this network. And we're hearing stories about using Cloud Connect and Rapid Private Interconnect. We're hearing stories about some of the peering improvements. We're hearing stories about big research appliances and improvements to DTNs and cache nodes and other things in terms of utilizing the backbone. We're also starting to hear from connectors about their upgrades and are excited of the first 5 that are talking about moving to 400 gig. I believe one of these is actually implemented their first 400 gig interface, and we expect others to come along very soon in terms of taking advantage of the 400 gig capability on the backbone. So my hope is that next year, in December of 2022, we will be having another update with you in Denver in person. And so I'll wrap up my comments just by saying an enormous amount of progress. Thank you all for your support, your contributions, your collaboration and teamwork during the pandemic and during this transition. And glad to be with you today and really look forward to seeing you in person next year. Turn off the slides with 2 minutes to spare. Any questions?
Hey, Rob, Michael Lambert. On your band or total bytes transmitted or across the network numbers, I assume this is single counted, not double counted.
Correct. Yeah. And, you know, actually, Chris or Molly can probably give you the details, but we call it offered load and it's measured in one direction.
Okay, great.
And pretty carefully monitored too. It's actually a data set that goes back to like 2008. And we put a lot of time in trying to make sure that it's curated.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, 1998. Sorry, not 2008. And yes, people need to bring their jackets to Denver, but that's all right. There'll be a lot of hot air. It'll be great. All right, great. Well, I think I am going to hand it right off to the next.